Whew. Hey everyone, welcome to Inside Gaming Memorial Daily. It's Clap Monday though. Hey, out there, all you Memorial Day for soldiers?
Yes.
Yep, that's right.
Foreign.
Thank you, Brian.
Can't blame me for not knowing.
Thank you for your service, and thank you to all the barbecue grill dads out there who are burning chicken as we speak.
It was really just my training. I'm no hero.
So I'm no hero either, and neither is Chris Roberts or anyone that put money into Star Citizen apparently, because that's what we're talking about today. Bang, got it. Yeah, so as video games go, Star Citizen is a beast.
It has raised more money than any other video game in crowdfunding history.
It's not even close, really. Backers of the space exploration extravaganza have ponied up more than $288 million, putting it up there with some of the most expensive video games ever made, crowdfunded or not.
Sorry, I needed to yawn. I tried to suppress it, but it didn't work.
You mean looking at PNGs of spaceships is not exciting and worth $1,500?
And despite the fact that it's been in development since 2011, the wildly ambitious game doesn't have a release date. It doesn't even have a beta. It's only got a couple of planets, some moons, and an asteroid.
It's kind of playable. Sort of. You can download it. But here's the really bad news. According to a recent report from Forbes this month, the game might not ever be ready to play. And it gets worse, doesn't it, Brian?
Yeah, they might be out of money too. They might have gone through 288 million bucks.
How did this happen?
Oh, were you waiting for me?
Yes. That was a question to you. Yes.
He's a hero.
Well,
you can't see her looking at you? Come on.
well, to answer that, we first have to look at who is in charge, and that would be Chris Roberts, the famed developer behind games like Wing Commander. Star Citizen is his baby, and it's his big return to video games after a not very successful try at making movies in Hollywood.
So we'll get into all of it. Basically today we're gonna tell you about the whole narrative and try and figure out if there's a path to victory for Star Citizen, if it even exists anymore. So let's get into it. There are a lot of interesting things about Star Citizen other than its budget. For one, its publisher Cloud Imperium Games is structured very differently than a traditional game development studio.
Basically, unlike every other game with a budget this size, there is no publisher involved. There are no corporate overlords counting paperclips, and no EAs ready to shut everything down at a moment's notice.
I mean, that's an awfully nice narrative to sell people, but I think now we're starting to see the consequence of that.
Yeah.
Forbes described Cloud Imperium Games this way, quote, "Creatives are in charge here, not profit-driven bean counters or deadline-enforcing suits."
That sounds amazing. We want that from all our video games, right?
I mean, if you want them to be finished, maybe not. That's the problem. This article went on to say that the decision-making process of Cloud Imperium Games is a tortured one, to say the least. What did they have to say about it, Brian?
So it quoted David Jennison, who used to be Cloud Imperium's lead character artist before he quit. He complained that Chris Roberts frequently reversed approvals for the characters he was working on. And he actually wrote a letter to the company's HR department, and he said, all the decisions for the character pipeline and approach have been made by Roberts. It became clear this was a company-wide pattern. Chris Roberts dictates all.
So instead of a publisher, it's Chris Roberts just running everything.
How much of that is just like somebody's personality? And how much of it is this weird image that's been created around cult of personalities like Elon Musk, where everyone wants to be that CEO brilliant guy, so they just go around making all the decisions, trusting their own stupid mind.
I mean, I've heard similar things about Kojima.
Yeah.
Whom I love and look up to as being difficult to work with because he's a crazy creative, but at this point he is a cult icon, so we have no idea what Death Stranding is going to look like, and
Or
there's just a
when it'll
small
come out.
team of producers trying to rein him in, but maybe he needed no one needs Konami, but someone like Konami.
So while Chris Roberts does have a long resume at this point, it's pretty hit and miss, to be honest. Some of Roberts' work, like Wing Commander, has been universally acclaimed. Other projects, not so much. And over the last 20 years, Roberts has assembled a cast of characters around him who are kind of weird, to say the least.
So like we said, Roberts is best known for the Wing Commander series, which started in 1990. Those were huge hits and put him on the map, but then starting in the late 90s, Roberts got into the movie business. He convinced 20th Century Fox to make a 30 million movie version of Wing Commander, which he directed. It was a bomb and lost nearly $20 million.
I saw that on opening night, man. I was so excited and then so confused. It got up right to the point where the games start and then it was like, no, we're not going to do that.
Video game movies are always great. What are you talking about?
It's a space plane movie. How did they make that boring? Roberts later co-founded production company Ascended Pictures, which made a number of movies in the 2000s. This is stuff like 2008's Outlander and The Big White, which released in 2005. Its most successful film was Lord of War, starring Nicolas Cage.
Roberts' partner in making movies was German lawyer named Ortwin Freyamuth, I believe is how you pronounce that
well
cool
done.
ass last name. And obviously movie movie making is expensive, so they got financing from an investment fund that seemed a bit sketchy. Forbes actually reported that the investment fund was using a tax scheme to raise money in Germany.
Forbes went on to describe this further, right, Brian?
Yeah, they said by 2006, the German government had stopped the practice, this scheme they used to raise this money, and then the fund's founder was sentenced to jail for tax fraud.
Oops.
But it did stress also that Roberts and Freiermuth were not implicated in it.
You can take money that's like a couple of steps down the chain from something illegal that happened, and you can not be implicated, but you can know that it still happened. Anyway, there was some other weirdness with a woman named Sandy Gardner. She once allegedly invaded the home of Roberts' ex-wife, Madison Peterson, and Peterson got a restraining order.
Yeah, Forbes reported that in a signed court declaration, Roberts said Gardner had also visited Peterson's San Diego home and once tried to strangle him. He said in the declaration, "I believe that if she had a gun, she would have killed me. I believe that Miss Gardner is not emotionally stable."
So, what happened next? As you would expect, Roberts eventually married Gardner and co-founded Cloud Imperium Games with her.
What? Meanwhile, Freiermuth, the German lawyer, is now vice chairman of Cloud Imperium. So yeah, weird group of people getting together on this one.
It's just passion, all right? We're just passionate out here,
Sure,
doing our
yeah.
thing. Okay, point is, the management of Star Citizen came from some sketchy backgrounds and not a whole lot of business success. Right, we're back on Star Citizen. So like we said, one of the most distinctive features about Cloud Imperium Games is that it's run by creatives, not a publisher. There's no suit standing behind Chris Roberts saying, hey, maybe you shouldn't do that.
And while it does sound great to have a creative in charge, sometimes they can be just too creative. Especially when it comes to future creep, which is when the development team keeps adding more and more features until a project just gets too unwieldy. Like
Yeah.
one of my favorite quotes that I've heard from a game developer is that a game is never finished, only shipped. At a certain point, you just have to stop making stuff and put the thing out.
Yeah, you have to set a deadline and then start saying no to things so you can hit that deadline.
It sucks, but it's necessary.
And the situation where you never set a deadline because you just want to keep biting off cool ideas is what happens when you have too many creatives and not enough bean counters.
And too much money?
Yeah, too much money, it feels like you have an unlimited runway. A recent example of feature creep gone wild was the System Shock remake from developer Night Dive Studios. I was really excited for this and super bummed out by what happened. A few years ago, it raised more than $1.3 million from more than 21,000 backers who wanted to see the 1994 classic brought up to modern times.
But last year, the development team announced that I keep wanting to say future creep.
That's a cool term.
But last year, the development team announced that feature creep.
Whoa, hold on a second. The camera's
You got
doing
red?
it again. Well, now it's white. Now it looks like you're bathed in like a glow.
Speaking in tongues are my favorite YouTube videos, although they really freak me out.
America's weird, man.
Yep.
But last year, the development team announced that feature creep on the game had gotten out of control and they were going to reboot it all over again to get it more in line with the original version.
There is at least a brushed up version of the original System Shock out there if you want to play it. That UI is a bear. Anyway, as for Star Citizen, it looks like it has taken feature creep to a whole new level. Mark Day, this is a producer on Wing Commander 4 from way back, who runs a company that worked on Star Citizen, described to Forbes how it all happened. What did he say, Brian?
So he said, he kind of described how feature creep became a major problem at Star Citizen. He said, as the money rolled in, what I consider to be some of Roberts' old bad habits popped up, not being super focused. It had got out of hand, in my opinion. The promises being made, call it feature creep, call it whatever it is. Now we can do this, now we can do that. I was shocked.
Yeah.
Which leads us to a question. Gamers love to criticize big publishers as soulless corporate suits who are obsessed with nothing but the bottom line, and if you're EA, royally screwing up the Star Wars license and closing down once great studios. But when it comes to a game like Star Citizen, which has clearly become the victim of massive feature creep, maybe it actually needs a publisher. Maybe it needs a parent to bang on the door and yell, hey, what are you kids doing in there?
At some point, the player base should hold them accountable.
Some of them have sued.
Theoretically, they are the publishers in this case, except that there aren't a whole lot of like actual contractual obligations there.
Yeah.
So Cloud Imperium can just be like, F off. Here's the thing though, there are examples of effective publishers who know how to manage creatives and get them to execute on their visions on time. Look at Nintendo. Say what you will about some of their consoles, but their first party IP has a well-earned reputation for quality, and they make like bonkers creative new stuff sometimes, like Labo. How do you even conceive of that, much less make it a finished product and get it out the door? But they have a knack for doing it. And there's a counterexample of that too. When it doesn't work out, like Metroid Prime 4, they've shown a willingness to admit that things have gotten off track and start over and communicate it to the audience in a straightforward and easy to understand way.
And while Square Enix has had lots of games in development hell, it also pulled off a nearly impossible feat when it brought Final Fantasy XIV back from the dead. Sounds like they're doing something pretty similar with the Final Fantasy VII remake. It was dead for a while, they just keep working on it over and over again, and eventually we'll see it.
Nomura's projects tend to languish a lot. Final Fantasy 15 took forever to get out. They finally got it out the door and it was mostly good.
Good game.
Kingdom Hearts 3 finally shipped because they had to switch producers to get somebody in there and just say, no, we're gonna
the game.
finish this thing and get it out.
Yeah.
And it's gonna have 8 hours of You Got a Friend in Me, because everyone loves that song. So we know that there are tons of examples of publishers screwing up, or at the very least doing stuff that we don't really agree with. Stuff like canceling promising looking games like Scalebound, or shuttering a studio like Visceral Games when it was making a Star Wars game that looked like it had a lot of potential.
And of course, we gotta talk about Anthem, which is the current poster child for a developer dragging its feet and then a publisher pushing out the thing too soon.
If you're the publisher, you're like, you had 3 years! You had 3 years on this game. We have to sell something.
Especially for EA, when so much of what they do is defined by the stock market. Like, they really have, their consumers are actually the people who own stocks, not gamers.
We like to think that we're the end of the road, but not always. Now, you probably heard that Anthem went through its own development hell. It was first teased way back in 2012, but over the years, the game went through a number of reboots and rewrites.
Yeah, Kotaku mentioned something about this, right, Brian?
Yeah, they had a big expose about Anthem's development, and apparently for the years of 2015 and 2016, its team didn't really even accomplish that much. It wasn't clear what the basic gameplay would be or how missions would work, and the online infrastructure was also a big issue. They hadn't really made a multiplayer game like this before. By the end of 2016, Anthem had been in some sort of pre-production in a various form for roughly 4 years.
God, that's a lot of money. So yeah, somebody's gotta come in and crack the whip, and that's what EA did. We've invested too much in this to not have anything to sell. In early 2017, EA's Patrick Soderlund demanded to see something, and the BioWare team finally came up with a demo.
But still, Kotaku reported that a lot of the game's features weren't finalized or implemented until the very final months of its development. One dev told Kotaku that it felt like the whole game was built in the last 6 to 9 months, which
Nice.
A, nice, and B, kind of makes sense.
So Anthem released in February of this year, and the fact that it was a rush job definitely showed, but it released.
That's more than we can say for Star Citizen.
Yeah, Forbes reported at the end of 2017, Roberts had just $14 million in the bank. He's since raised more money though, things like selling ships to backers. You guys love your JPEGs and emails. Yeah, but it's still not a great sign considering that the game has raised hundreds of millions of dollars and has very little to show for it at this point.
As Star Citizen is showing, maybe having no publisher just isn't a great thing, because there's nobody to count the money, nobody to watch the clock, and nobody to say, hey guys, what have we actually been accomplishing over the last 8 years?
And while Chris Roberts has made some big budget games in the past, he probably wasn't prepared for something with a budget approaching $300 million, especially after being out of the games industry for so long.
Again, that's where a publisher might have helped. I mean, none of us like having a boss, but they do serve a purpose.
I remember seeing Chris Roberts' presentation at GDC in 2014, and then he was like, "We're gonna make something that no one else has made." So I get the perils of biting off a development scope that's miles beyond what any publisher even knows how to execute on. So if they had a publisher, it probably would have turned into would have had a scope, would have come out, would have been a normal video game. I get that he was trying to make something new and amazing.
Yeah.
And with that, there's
He's
risk.
competing with Eve as well. Like, he's competing with something that's already incredible and unfathomably well built out. Like, it's
For
not
sure.
easy to do.
At the end of the day, maybe the problem with Star Citizen is that too much freedom wasn't a good thing. We all like to believe in this hippie utopia of creators driving everything and the bad businessman coming in and kicking Kojima in the shin and telling him that Metal Gear Solid 5 is bad and you need to ship it right now. I don't care if you... He was working on that game for years.
A long time. We figured it out, everyone. Freedom is bad. Happy Memorial Day.
Fight for our right to play video games and complain about them. Thank you for your service, everybody. Let's go watch videos of people freaking out in Baptist churches.
Can I see this?
I don't know if you want to. There's no unseeing that stuff. Hey everyone, and welcome to Inside Gaming Daily for Friday!
Yes!
That's so musical.
Thank you.
Got a nice 3-day weekend coming up, a little song to guide you into the weekend. However, we got some bad news for you guys. You might remember that Telltale Games collapsed last year in spectacular fashion, leaving a once great studio reduced to rubble.
Well, now its games are disappearing from digital